So I mentioned Harley Finklestein. You may know the name. You may recognize it if you've ever done any business on Shopify. And I will let you know, by the way, when we did our historic Quebec Anglo shirts, that's where we were, was on Shopify. It has become one of Canada's, I guess fair to say, one of North America's leading e-commerce businesses. Harley Finklestein is its CEO. And the reason we're talking today is not to talk about Shopify, Harley, but to talk about your two little girls, 5 and 7, and what happened in school that spurred you to go ahead and publish a children's book that I don't imagine even you ever saw coming. So first of all, welcome. And what was it that happened to your little girls in school that made you decide to do this?
Thanks for having me on the show. It's actually interesting because, my wife Lindsay and I have sort of a family motto, which is how you do anything is how you do everything, which I think speaks to intentionality generally about the way we live our life. And this was one of those examples. Bailey, our 7-year-old, was in first grade last year, and as part of her assignment for school, she was given this sort of multiple choice questionnaire, which was very simple. What do you want to be when you grow up? And she was given a bunch of options: doctor, lawyer, accountant, dancer, singer. And there was no entrepreneur on there, which, first of all, I thought that was sort of strike one. But strike two was the question itself. I didn't react well to it because the question was, what do you want to be when you grow up, as opposed to what do you want to do now? What do you want to build now? And, for those that know my story, know that my first entrepreneurial venture started here in Montreal back in the early 90s. I was a DJ, and no one would hire me. So at 13 years old, I started my own DJ company, and I hired myself and ended up DJing like 500 bar and bat mitzvahs. So my experience with entrepreneurship has always been that. And so I thought, what better way for me to affect change? I mean, I can convince the school to change the curriculum, but that's going to take a long time. Or I can write a book that I think is compelling enough and convincing enough that it gets distributed to schools, hopefully all over Canada, that encourages teachers and faculty and administration to talk to kids about why entrepreneurship is such a great thing to do, not just when you're older, but at any stage of your life.
You know, it's funny. I would think the first challenge here would be to get them to pronounce the word entrepreneur. I imagine that's a bit of an issue. But beyond that, when you talk about entrepreneurship, I think, okay, well, that's a book you write perhaps for people, as you're suggesting, right, who have decided to go into business. They're older, but not for 7-year-olds necessarily. So why do you think it's so important at that age?
One of the things that I think entrepreneurship does, my family's history is obviously deep here in Montreal. My father and my grandparents immigrated here from Hungary in 1956. My grandfather's first move when he got to Montreal, a Holocaust survivor, escaped persecution in the Hungarian Revolution. He set up a little egg stall at the farmer's market on Jean Talon. It's called Le Capitaine. That egg stall is still there today, 60 years later. My grandfather's has passed, but my uncle now runs it. Now, my grandfather did not call that entrepreneurship. He called that survival. He called it putting food on the table and a roof over their heads. And what I think is so fascinating about Montreal being this incredible city is that it's full of immigrants, which means it's full of entrepreneurs. And in Montreal, for me growing up, I celebrated, I didn't have Michael Jordan or Wayne Gretzky posters on my wall. I looked up to people like Aldo Ben-Sadoun, and I looked up to people like Gila Liberté, and I looked up to people like Sal Parasuco, these iconic entrepreneurs. And those were my heroes growing up. And because I was inspired and I was around entrepreneurship, everything I did my entire life, whether it was a DJ company or when I was 17, needed to make some money. I started a t-shirt business when I was at McGill. Everything was about that. I think entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial activity is the greatest way for humans to solve problems, but also to find their life's work. And, you're doing that right now with your incredible radio show and all the content you put out. It is your life's work. You take an entrepreneurial approach to it. And I went to law school because I wanted to become a better entrepreneur. But what I realized in law school was most people were there because they were scared of pursuing what really mattered to them. And they felt that law school, becoming a lawyer, was a safe career. And I think that some of the most happy people I know, most engaged, are people that have started something on their own, and they're entrepreneurs. And the cool part is, Shopify, we have millions of entrepreneurs and stores on our platform. I was able to go and look for a couple examples of entrepreneurs that were young, people like Evan Sharma, who's selling paintings at many tens of thousands of dollars at the age of 14, 15 years old, or Karis Rogers, who had a fashion show at New York Fashion Week when she was 13 years old. Wow. I mean, this is what's possible when you inject entrepreneurial mindsets into curriculum.
I will point out one thing in the article in the Gazette that I read that I thought was absolutely, spot on. You talk about entrepreneurship at a young age, and when you talk about people coming here as immigrants, right, and we're talking after the war, but I mean, even on a regular basis now, who, when they go to find jobs, simply can't find them for whatever reason and are almost forced, if they want to work and want to be able to put food on the table, to become entrepreneurs.
That's right. Sometimes entrepreneurship is something you do out of passion, and sometimes entrepreneurship is something you do out of necessity.
Right.
And what's so amazing about, I'm sitting here in the Montreal Shopify office on Lagosier and Beaver Hall, and I look around and I don't see, chain stores. I see Parma Cafe. I see like this amazing pizza restaurant next door. I see all these amazing small businesses that are ran by entrepreneurs. And some of them did so because they truly were passionate about it. And some of them just had no choice. Entrepreneurship is the greatest equalizer.
Do you find it's more difficult now? I mean, maybe that's not a fair question. We're coming through a pandemic that, people still say hurt so many businesses and entrepreneurs. Is it more difficult now to become an entrepreneur in your assessment?
No, I actually think it's a lot easier. I think there's more competition for it because the barrier to entry into entrepreneurship has never been lower, and the cost of failure has never been lower. I mean, I'll give you an example. You can't see this, but right next to me is a screen print. It was gifted to me from a guy named Ben Francis. Ben Francis has a company called Gymshark. He's now currently the youngest billionaire in British history, UK history. Well, Ben started Gymshark out of his dorm room while he was literally delivering pizzas on the side. He set up a store on Shopify for $29 and built Gymshark into what is now a company that rivals Nike. Now, that would have been impossible for someone like that to do 10, 20, 30 years ago because you didn't have distribution. But the mix of great technology, great software, and the ability to actually scale businesses at this incredible pace has made entrepreneurship more accessible, and it means you can scale it much faster, you can grow it much faster. So if you try something today and it fails, you can try something else. Try a different business, a different product. It doesn't cost that. It's for price of a couple cups of coffee, you can get that done. But if my grandfather would have failed at setting up that Jean Talon farmer's market egg stall, Le Capitaine, it meant that my father wouldn't have had food on his table. Yeah. And so the risk tolerance and the appetite for it, it's just very, very different. Now, there's more noise now because a lot of people are starting businesses. But I think today, right now as we sit here, it is the greatest time in history for entrepreneurs to get started.
Harley, I don't want to run out of time, and I do want to touch on one other thing, and that's the fact that you chose, now you're born in Montreal, but you've lived in a variety of different places. You could basically choose to live anywhere. You came back to Montreal, and, for sometimes when we talk about the city, there are a lot of people complaining about a lot of things here. Yet here are you, CEO of a major company, and you've come back to Montreal. Why? What was it that compelled you to come back?
We had three choices. It was going to be Montreal, Miami, I grew up in South Florida, or New York, where I spend the vast majority of my time for business reasons. We picked Montreal. We picked Montreal for two reasons. One was culture. There's no place that Lindsay and I, my wife and I, have ever experienced that has the joie de vivre, the culture, the energy that Montreal has. I mean, it's palpable. I walk from our home in West Bend to our office in Old Montreal every single day, and I walk through the city. The city is alive, but there's this incredible culture the city has that I've never seen anywhere else. That's the first thing. The second thing is the community. I find that the Montreal community, both the Jewish community, the entrepreneurship community, the general community, is like there is this deep passion towards Montreal. But you said something really interesting. The people that heard that I moved to Montreal outside of Montreal have said, oh, that makes total sense. Montreal is an incredible place. It's often Montrealers who ask me, hey, why would you move back here? There's almost like this self-deprecating side of it. But for me, it's super clear. Like, there is no place like it. It's super unique. What makes it unique is the fact that it's French and English. It's an immigrant city, but it also has this sort of global footprint. One of the greatest, I forget who mentioned this, but someone told me that if you want to look for cities of real culture, look for where the best chefs, the best DJs, the best musicians, the best artists hang out. And honestly, that is Montreal. Montreal has this amazing artistic cultural community, but we also have these incredible entrepreneurial ventures and big companies. And, Shopify is one of the second or third largest companies in the country right now, and I'm very proud to be managing it from Montreal.
And we're glad to have you here. Harley, thank you so much for the time. Truly appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Harley Finklestein, president of Shopify. Some very interesting I'm just trying to think of when you use the word entrepreneurship, I think that scares people off. People think you need to be rich or have a lot of money to do it. And of course, he's making the point that you don't. And I think that's fascinating. It's great to have someone like that here and pushing that from Montreal.